What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. I'm one of the co-hosts of the podcast. I go by the name of Kyle Dabra.
What up, everybody? Kevin Valentin over here, the other 50% of the podcast. Kyle, what's up, my boy? Had a nice little vacation, a little week off from the show. Tell me
Yes.
about your day, bro. Tell me about your trip.
Yeah, man. It was lit. I loved every second of it. Went to New Mexico for a couple days, and it was just nice not to be constantly looking at my phone the entire time, just with constantly getting berated with just like text, emails, phone calls. Like, it was just nice to get away from all that for 4 or 5 days. Went to this little place called Mills. There's a canyon about like 5-10 minutes away from town, and just camped down there for like 3-4 days. It was awesome. I loved it. The weather was nice. The kayaking was really cool, especially like where one of the rivers runs through the canyon. Believe it's the Canadian River. It goes right through there. Like, the river just goes right along the canyon wall. It's got some really good pictures. Just all in all, had a great time. So I went with my boy Kevin I used to work with. I went with him, his wife Peyton, and one of her friends. Her name was Amy, and it was just fun. I loved all of it. To be honest with you, like, I wouldn't mind going back there within a couple months before the end of the year, just because I love that place. And I definitely needed a quick reset, just a quick recharge the batteries. Now I'm here. So let's just get to it, because I'm here.
Oh, hell yeah, bro. Happy you got a nice little reset. Funny how your friend is Kevin and his wife is Peyton, my favorite. I'm just, I just thought I'd throw that out there. You can't get away from me, homie. You just can't.
There is one thing, though, that I do have to talk about with this trip. And Kevin and I kind of talked about it before we started recording. So check this out. So the first night that we get there, we're making fajitas for dinner. And fajitas are done. Everybody's sitting down. Everybody's eating. And I look up in the sky, and I notice there's like these like white lights that are in the sky. And some of them are like pretty close to each other, and some of them are kind of like equally spread apart. And these are not stars, and they're moving across the sky. So the first like 3 or 4 minutes go by after seeing it for the first time. It goes away. So I was thinking, okay, it was weird. I've never seen anything like that before, but I'm like, it's whatever. It's like I didn't even think really that much of it. So I go back to eating my fajitas, and I look back up in the same spot in the sky, and I notice now, like, there's like a bunch of these things in a line moving across the sky. And I've never seen anything like this before. And I think that the whole UFO thing kind of like is interesting to me. I'm not like going down rabbit holes to like figure out like what it's about, but I just kind of find that stuff interesting. And this was honestly like what I thought was like my first like UFO type experience, simply because I've never seen anything where you look up in the sky and you see all these white lights moving across the sky really fast and not making any noise. And mind you, like, there were like 2 separate lines that we saw. There was one that lasted like 3 or 4 minutes, where there were maybe 15 or 20 of these things moving across the sky. And then the second time, it was about damn near 10 minutes. And in that line in particular, it was probably somewhere around like 50 to 75 of these things moving across the sky from like east to west. And then it happened the next night that we made dinner around the same time. And then it happened the last night that we were staying there. So I remember like we were talking about it because I'd never seen anything like that before. And I didn't rule out the possibility that it could be UFOs. But when I saw it happening for like the second and third night in a row, I was thinking it just looks like some like big satellite convoy. And then I remember when I finally got cell phone reception and pulled over at a gas station, I just started looking up like satellite convoys on Google. And what we saw was SpaceX satellites, because SpaceX has this, I don't know if it's like a satellite program that they've been doing for like maybe the last year or two, but there's been a lot of like reports of seeing like these huge line of satellites moving across the sky, not just in the United States, but across the world for like the last couple of years or so. And I think it has a lot to do with what we saw this past weekend. I think it was just SpaceX satellites, but it was really, really interesting because I've never seen satellites lined up like that before. I've seen satellites one or two kind of spread out going completely different directions, but never in a line. And some of these were actually really close to each other. So I thought it was really cool to see. And it's just kind of ironic. Like we were in New Mexico, and like New Mexico has like one of the most like iconic UFO stories in Roswell, New Mexico, that took place like, I don't know, like 70 years ago, where there was like supposedly this they picked up some sort of alien craft that crashed into the desert out there. But I just thought it was ironic. Like I'm in the one state like where like you have like one of the most iconic UFO stories ever, and now I see like a bunch of satellites moving across the sky, and I have no idea what it is. But
So, I mean, full disclaimer, everybody, this may or may not be Kyle. We have not gotten a factual backup check, or we haven't been able to prove his actual existence. He may or may not have been kidnapped. He may or may not have been hypnotized. He may or may not have been probed. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if this is Kyle. We'll figure it out by the end of the episode. Just throwing it out there for everybody's knowledge.
But I mean, other than that, that was cool to see, especially that we saw it 3 straight nights. But everything else, it was a great vacation. But ready to get back into the swing of things. And Kevin, I'll lay out the agenda for what we got for today. So we'll go over Jaylen Brown being out for the rest of the season. He suffered a torn ligament in his wrist. So the timetable on his recovery is going to be somewhere in between 3 to 6 months. So it's not only just a regular season that he's out for, he's out for the playoffs entirely. So we'll talk about how that impacts Boston's playoff chances now that he's out of the lineup. We'll also kind of talk about the NBA play-in tournament situation. So what Kevin and I are going to do is pretty simple. We'll pick one team from each conference, and we'll basically say why we think that team could make some real damage if they were to get out of the play-in tournament and into the playoffs in just a week and a half from now. We'll also talk about Steph Curry. He just continues his rampage across the entire league. It's absolutely cooking this past weekend. I wasn't here, but when I saw one of the stat lines that popped up when I got cell phone reception from my vacation, I saw that he dropped 49 points in 29 minutes against the Oklahoma City Thunder the other day. It was just absolutely insane seeing that highlight reel of what he was doing against them. So we'll go into just Steph's overall season. And I know Kev's probably going to make a pretty compelling case on why Steph Curry is going to be or should be this year's MVP. And then we'll kick it over to Major League Baseball for a little bit. We'll talk about the Yankees. The Yankees have been on a pretty good run the last 2 weeks or so. So Kevin's definitely going to touch on that. And then we'll round out the episode with a little bit of football news. We'll talk about DK Metcalf's performance in a 100-meter dash against possible Olympic runners. And it's just kind of odd seeing a NFL receiver go essentially toe-to-toe with some of the fastest runners in the United States. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we'll talk about Eric Fisher, who is the former offensive tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. He signed with the Colts this weekend. I know Kev's probably got some things to talk about with that since that Colts are his team. And we'll talk about that to round out the episode. But like I said at the top, we'll talk about Jaylen Brown being out for the rest of the regular season. He tore one of his ligaments in his wrist, so he will be not only out for the regular season, but he's going to be out for the playoffs as well. Kev, Jaylen Brown has been one of the most instrumental players for Boston this year. He's a great two-way player, one of the best in the league in that regard. His ability to score and his ability to play solid defense from beginning of the game to the end of the game is going to be sorely missed going into the playoffs for Boston. So, Kev, just let me get your thoughts on what do you think the chances are that the Celtics can make it into the playoffs, and possibly could they even get out of the play-in tournament now that he's out?
I mean, bluntly, I think the Celtics ship has been sinking the last week or so. I mean, Boston has not been playing well as of the last couple of days. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Boston is on like a 4 or 5 game skid right now. Excuse me. They're on a 2 to 3 game skid right now. I misread. I apologize. And they're just, they're solely relying on Jason Tatum. I mean, it's hard. And Jason Tatum's been kind of carrying the load alongside Jaylen Brown, and the loss of this man, like Kyle said, probably their best two-way player on the team and one of the best in the league. So you're losing just under 25 points a game. He's scoring 24.7, 6 boards, 3.4 assists, shooting just under 49% from the field and a hair under 40% from the three-point line. It's hard to replace that. And for someone to have to step up and do what they have to do off this very thin Boston bench is a tall task. And I mean, the Eastern Conference playoffs, they're heating up in the next couple of days. I mean, we're on the tail end of the season, about maybe 4 or 5 games, depending on what team we're looking at here that's left in the regular season. Obviously, Boston is currently sitting at the 7th seed, Charlotte right behind them by 2 games in the 8th. Obviously, Washington 1 game behind them with the 9th seed, and the Pacers half a game behind the Wizards. So, I mean, like, the final 4 seeds are relatively within 3.5 games of each other. And it's just going to get crazy. So the play-in tournament, if I'm being honest, I don't think Boston comes out of that. I don't think Boston gets away from the play-in tournament, because they're going to play Miami, who is 2 games ahead of them tonight. And I think with the loss of Jaylen Brown, I really think that Miami's going to take it to them. Miami won their matchup earlier this weekend, I believe, at a score of like 130 to like 124 or something like that, really close. But Miami was able to hold them off. And Miami's been playing really well as of late. 7-3 in their last 10. Obviously, Boston being 4-6 in their last 10, and now their loss of one of their star players. I just don't see Boston having enough in the tank, unless we talked about it before the episode, unless we get like 40 to 50 points from Jason and we see UConn Kemba Walker. I don't know if Boston's going to have enough to make a dent in this postseason, let alone make it out of the play-in. Obviously, the Hornets have LaMelo Ball back, and they have a pep in their step as of late. And obviously, the Washington Wizards are one of the hottest teams in basketball right now. They're 7-3 in their last 10. Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal are just playing out of this world. They're putting up my player-esque numbers in their last couple of weeks. So, I mean, the two of them together is a scary combination against anybody, and we'll get into that in a minute. But in regards to Boston, I genuinely don't believe that they're going to find a way to come out of this play-in tournament, and I don't think that they even come out of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this Jaylen Brown injury just kind of encapsulates Boston's season in a nutshell here. It's just been a struggle the entire season for Boston, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't think they have any shot to get out of the play-in tournament. I don't see it here. And when I look at this team, I remember we talked about this a couple weeks ago. They needed Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to consistently score to keep Boston competitive in a pretty solid Eastern Conference. And they were able to do that. And then obviously now we got Jaylen out of the lineup with his wrist injury. And I just don't know where they're going to be able to get the points from. They could maybe look to Evan Fournier to maybe try to replace some of the production that Jaylen Brown brought to the team while he was on the roster.
So subpar, though, since they got him.
I will say this. He did have a game, I want to say last week when I was on vacation, where he did drop 30 points. So I don't necessarily think that offensively they're going to be so anemic that they can't score. I think they're still going to be able to score a decent amount of points. It's just that defensively,
it's going to be on the other end.
It's just going to be really tough because, look, they gave up 130 points to Miami just a couple of days ago. I mean, don't get me wrong, Miami's a really solid team, but 130, that's a lot of points for Miami to score in one game. They gave up over 120 to the Bulls. They gave up almost 130 to the Trailblazers. They gave up 140 against the Spurs at the end of April. Granted, that was an overtime game, but still, you're giving up a lot of points in the process here.
And that's with Jaylen in the roster.
And with Kemba. Kemba's granted, he's a defensive liability for the most part, but he can go out there and score. It's just this team does not have those knockdown shooters like Brooklyn has. Brooklyn's only there simply because they have Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. Those guys are all knockdown shooters. Boston has a couple in Jason Tatum. Kemba is decent in spurts, but he's been inconsistent this year. And Jaylen Brown, outside of Jason, was the most consistent player for this Boston team. And now that he's out of the lineup, I think it could really mess up the chemistry here. I think that they could still be a competitive team in the plan. I don't think they're going to get absolutely scorched in the games that they could potentially play in that play-in tournament. But it really does look like Boston's season is going to end pretty early this year. And it sucks because I really do think that this is a good team as far as like the top end of the roster goes. It's just the back end of the roster really is weak. And that's something that I think
it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Because when you really look at it, the play-in situation, if it ends today, Boston would face New Orleans. Excuse me, I'm so these habits. Boston would face Charlotte, and Washington would face Indiana. If we're just looking at it blow for blow, I don't know if Boston has enough firepower to combat Miles Bridges, Gordon Hayward, and LaMelo Ball coming back, and even Terry Rozier. They're playing very good team basketball. Obviously, they're 5-5 in their last 10. But since LaMelo's been back, they just have a different little, like a buzz, like no pun intended, or like an electric little spark because he just brings that intensity. I mean, he just played his brother last night or 2 nights ago, and him and Lonzo were going at it.
Yeah.
Just the kid is very poised for the position that he's in, and I think that Charlotte being in the position that they're in, and Boston being in the trending downward position that I just see, I see the Hornets kind of taking that position from them if it were to end today.
Yeah, it's just I don't know what Boston's going to be because like let's say this, let's just say it for hypothetical purposes here. Let's say Boston loses that 7-8 matchup against Charlotte. They would more than likely have to play the Wizards because I think the Wizards, if they were to play the Pacers in that 9-10 series, in that 9-10 matchup, I think the Wizards beat the Pacers. And I'll be honest, I don't think really anybody wants to go up against the Wizards right now because have you been watching what freaking Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal have been putting on night in and night out? I mean, Russell's going out there and getting 15 plus rebounds and assists almost on a nightly basis. You got Bradley.
I think like 5-6 games, he's averaging like I think 20 something, 15 and 15. It's ridiculous.
Bradley Beal just dropped 50 the other day when Russell scored, I think like 30 plus.
33, 15, and 19.
These are just mind-boggling numbers here.
Video game numbers.
If those guys are averaging 80 points between the two of them, Boston, there's no way that Boston can compete with that. And that's if Boston plays somewhat decent defense. And their defense has been shaky pretty much the entire season. So,
and Jaylen's their best defender, and he's a guard. He would have to guard either Bradley or Russell, and they don't have him anymore with Kemba being the liability that his is. I think Russell goes off.
Oh, yeah. Russell could go out there and get 40 against Kemba if he wanted to. But he would do more to kind of get some rebounds, get some assists, get some guys open for some good looks. So it would really kind of be all dependent on what Russell would want to do against that matchup against Kemba. But I just don't think it's in the cards for Boston this year. I think if they make it out of the play-in tournament, it's probably the best that they're going to get because after that, they're either going to have to play the Nets or the 76ers. And that's going to be a
sweep.
Really, yeah.
It's a sweep. Either way, it's a sweep.
They'd be lucky to win one game against those teams.
I don't think they get one. James Harden comes back this week. Philly is firing on all cylinders on an 8-game win streak. It's just no shot.
And I don't like being negative. I really don't.
No, I don't either. I like to be optimistic in certain senses, but when you lose your best defender and your second leading scorer at the literal end of the year, bro, that's like you have a patch on your tire on a road trip and you're legit maybe like a couple of miles away and the tire goes flat. Like there's no air left.
Mm-hmm.
What else can go wrong for them? Kemba's been in and out of the lineup all year. He hasn't been producing since he's been on Boston. Jason Tatum is shouldering the load alone. Tristan Thompson looks like a waste of a signing. And the list goes on and on. The defense is just not there. Brad Stevens' job has been put into question this offseason. Maybe he's on the hot seat or not. Danny Ainge has been put into question for all of those acquisitions or lack thereof with the trades and the draft picks that they've had over the last 5 years. Boston has just basically like self-imploded. If we're being honest, this last season. Last year, they were in a great position to go out there and go into the Eastern Conference Finals, and they just they couldn't do it.
Yeah, and you look at some of the departures. Gordon Hayward, he was he was okay for Boston. He was inconsistent though in his time there, but he's having a resurgent year in Charlotte. And I will say that I didn't actually mind the Evan Fournier trade back
I didn't
in,
either.
what was it, 2
Back in
months ago?
March.
Yeah, it was like 2 months ago. So I didn't necessarily mind that trade. It just really hasn't panned out the way that I thought it would for Boston. It's just, I think they made that move simply because I think that they thought that like the defense is just not going to be that good this year, and we're going to have to get the offensive production from somewhere. And
Yeah, we
Fournier
gotta
is
load
a
up.
decent option to score when he was with Orlando. He was a great scorer for them, really, between him and Vucevic.
Yeah,
So
they were great.
so it just really hasn't translated over in Boston, and it's just going to be a really tough hill for Boston to climb here. And I just don't think it's in the cards for them this year. And I hate being that negative, but that's just the reality of how I see it.
Yeah, no, there's not. Excuse me. In that case, it's not necessarily negativity. I mean, I don't think even if Jaylen was on this team, I don't think they're going to combat the top 3 seeds in the East. Excuse me. They might get a game or two because of the firepower of Jason Tatum and Jaylen, but there was no way they're beating Brooklyn or Philly in a 7-game series. So we all knew that the way that they were struggling defensively, if they did line up against Brooklyn, we already know Brooklyn's having one of the most historic, prolific offensive seasons in the league.
Mm-hmm.
With the terrible defense that Boston's providing, that's like gasoline on an already torched fucking forest. I genuinely think that Boston would just get absolutely obliterated off the face of the earth in a 7-game series.
Yeah.
If they were to face one of those top 2 seeds.
At the most, it's a 5-game series. Realistically, it's probably a sweep, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, since we're on the topic of talking about postseason, with it being just about a week away, Kyle and I are going to get into our quick opinions on what team, if they were to make it out of the play-in, could make some damage and some noise in their respective conferences. So we've been talking about the Eastern Conference. Let's just stay on that road. I believe Kyle and I already reiterated what we believe to be the scariest team at this point in time if they make it out of the play-in tournament. And we both come to the agreement. Kyle, what team is that, man?
It's the Washington Wizards. This team offensively, what they've been providing the last, I don't know, week or two has been absolutely ridiculous. Just the offensive output that Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook have been putting on has been nothing short of phenomenal. When you look at Russell Westbrook, for example, granted, Russell Westbrook has never been the most efficient shooter as far as point guards go. But when it comes to his overall impact to the whatever team he's on, whether it's with OKC, Houston, and now Washington, he has made his presence known and felt by his ability to distribute the basketball and rebound. And it's very rare that you see somebody like him at the caliber and really the star-studded nature of his game go out and just dominate the points per game side of things, getting assists and getting rebounds at the clip that he's getting at. I remember, even though like he may not score, like, let's say, I think there was a game he had like a week or two ago where he got like 14 points, wasn't his best shooting performance, but he followed it up with damn near 20 rebounds and 20 assists.
I think he did have 20 and 20, like 21 and 23 or something like that. It was ridiculous.
Like, who is putting up these types of numbers? I mean, the only person I could really think of that could put up, like, I won't say similar numbers, but kind of like where you can kind of get like that type of production is maybe Draymond Green on a good day where he's getting maybe around like 10 to 15 points a game, but he's making it up with the amount of assists that he's getting and the rebounds as well. It's just that Russell has just been cooking the entire
I was going to say
year.
Giannis, honestly, because Giannis has the ability to go up there and get 15 boards because of his height, and then he has decent court vision.
But the assist is where he slacks, though. Russell doesn't have that. Russell doesn't have that issue. Russell this year is averaging 22, 11, and 11. Like, this is
fourth
nuts.
year in his career, he's averaging a triple-double. And, guys, he has just tied Oscar Robinson as of last night or the night before in career triple-doubles with 181 total in his career.
And then you got Bradley Beal, who's a top 2 scorer in this league. He would be number 1 if it wasn't for Steph absolutely going just scorched earth against the entire league this last month or two. So whatever team's going to have to go up against those two guys in Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, that's going to be a problem. So let's just say hypothetically that the Wizards get out of the play-in and they play either the 76ers or the Nets. I don't think that they'll win those series against those teams, but they'll present a much more formidable team against the 76ers and the Nets, more than what Boston would be, like we just talked about a couple minutes ago.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Washington beat Brooklyn like 2 or 3 times this season. Russell going off in each of those games.
Yeah, I think actually one of the games, I think Russell ended up getting like a late second steal, ended up knocking down a 3, and they ended up winning the game.
Right. Yes, yes.
I think he ended up stealing it from Joe Harris in that game, if I remember correctly. So, like I said, though, they would be a much more competitive team to go up against Brooklyn or Philly. Is it enough to get them over the top against those teams? I doubt it. But out of the 4 teams in the Eastern Conference that are going to be in the play-in tournament, which is Boston, Charlotte, Washington, and Indiana, those are the 4 teams in the Western Conference. I give Washington the best chance. The Eastern Conference. I give them the best chance to possibly make it a series against the 76ers or the Nets. I wouldn't put it past them. With the Western Conference are going to have a little bit of a caveat here, because in the Western Conference, you have the Lakers.
Well, one second before we move to the West, I just have to give kudos and credit to those Indiana Pacers. They may be the 10th seed, but Domantas Sabonis has been absolutely scorching the NBA, and he's not getting a lot of credit. The night that they played the Wizards, when Bradley and Russell went off, the Pacers had their 2 stars go off too. Sabonis had 30. Who the hell? Australia's calling me? No, thanks. I don't know. That was really weird. Sorry, guys. Yeah. Domantas Sabonis had 30, 13, and 13. Chris LeVert had 38, 14, and 8. Mm-hmm. They have their own little duo right there. And we all know that Brogdon and Sabonis were having a great beginning and first half of the season. If the 3 of those men can get it going, I'm not going to sit here and dismiss and say that they don't have a chance to beat the Wizards, because, again, like Kyle said, Russell's not the most effective shooter in the world. So if he goes on one of those cold streaks, it's a 1 and you're done. It's literally you win and you move on. So if for whatever reason Sabonis dominates down low and he starts getting involved in the passing game and LeVert starts knocking down his shots, it is possible. I will say that I feel like the Pacers do match up a little bit better than the Wizards, because you just have the 1-2 punch of Bradley Beal and Russell, and there's not much afterwards other than maybe Hachimura at the 3 or the 4 position. No disrespect to the front court, or should I say the back court of Beal and Westbrook, but when you have a potential 3-headed monster that if Brogdon shows up, he could become, and maybe TJ Warren. I don't know if TJ's playing. I haven't really followed the Pacers too much this season. I know that he was out for the majority of the year recovering from some procedure or some surgery. But if the 3 players that I just named can get it going, I think that they match up very well. Obviously, LeVert would obviously have to go up against James Harden and or Kyrie Irving. Sabonis would probably go up against one-on-one with Kevin Durant, and so on and so forth. But I do think that they match up a little bit better than Washington overall as a team. Mm-hmm. So I'm definitely not going to sit here and just say Washington's a clear favorite. They're our pick mutually. We just believe that they're better right now. Mm-hmm. But if it's, like I said, a closer game down to the wire, don't be surprised if Indiana comes out of this play-in tournament.
I don't disagree. So it's just I would hedge my bets a little bit more with Washington, just because they've been a little bit more consistently. They've been more consistent lately.
100%.
With the Western Conference, though, my take's going to be a little bit different, because there's going to be a caveat with it. So as it currently stands, you got the Lakers at the 7, Golden State is at the 8, you got the Grizzlies at number 9, and you have the Spurs rounding it out at 10. So if the play-in tournament were to be played today, the Lakers will play the Warriors, and the Grizzlies will play the Spurs. I think out of those 4 teams, as it currently stands, the Lakers would have the best chance to really make a huge impact against the entire Western Conference, because you're getting LeBron James back, whether it's, I think it's tonight against the Knicks or at some point later this week. And then you got AD, who's coming off a monster game against Phoenix this past weekend, where he dropped 42 points and looked like he definitely had his full confidence in his body again after he dealt with his whole Achilles issue for the past 2 to 3 months. And I'm telling you right now, that performance that AD put on against Phoenix could really spark something significant for the Lakers moving forward for the last week of the season and into the playoffs. And if the Lakers catch fire at the right time as they're going into the playoffs, nobody in the Western Conference wants to go up against that team, especially when we got LeBron and AD to contend with. That's going to be a tough matchup. Here's where the caveat comes in. I don't think the Lakers are going to be the 7th seed. I think that they're going to overtake the Trailblazers and get the 6th spot in this last week of the season. The Lakers have some favorable matchups, and the Trailblazers have some tough matchups to go up later this week. So it wouldn't surprise me that the Lakers overtake Trailblazers, because the Lakers are only 1 game back of Portland at this point. And I think as long as the Lakers win 3 out of the 4 games and Portland drops 2 out of 4, and I think there's a very good chance that they could lose 3 out of 4, the Lakers could definitely take that 6th spot and miss the play-in tournament entirely. Now, if that's the case, where the Lakers don't play in the play-in tournament, I have to give it up to Golden State. Golden State, just because of what Steph Curry has been providing the entire season. This dude is phenomenal. I remember when I came back from my trip, I looked up one of the stat lines where he dropped 49 points in 29 minutes against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he hit 11 threes in the process. I mean, had Curry played like 35 to like 38 minutes in that game, he probably could have scored 60. He has just been absolutely phenomenal. He is now the leading point scorer in the NBA, and he's also the number 1 player in points per game scored. And I remember Kevin and I talked about this before the episode. We got to find out who freaking Steph Curry's chiropractor is, because he's going to have one hell of an adjustment after this season, just with the amount of weight that he's had to carry to get Golden State to this position. They are currently at the 8, and if they win their matchup against Portland, if Portland slides back to the 7 spot, I think Golden State could definitely win that game. And it would pretty much tell me that the Warriors are going to have a decent shot to go up against the Suns. I still think the Suns are going to win that matchup if it holds out that way. But I don't think any team really wants to deal with that guy in Steph Curry. You do not want to deal with that man, especially with the tear that he's been on recently. Good luck trying to stop him. So there are some decent defenders in this league. So if Golden State were to like maintain that 8th spot, they would go up against the Jazz. Maybe Mike Conley Jr. can find a way to slow them down if Golden State were to get into the playoffs. But that is a tough task. Don't get me wrong. Mike Conley Jr. is a solid defender. But Steph has been Steph, and he's been cooking for 2 months straight. And there's a very real chance that he could make a really strong case to scoop up the MVP by the end of the year. I'm just laying that out there. I know, Kevin, you could talk about that a little bit later, but those are the 2 teams that I have that could make a pretty solid impact if they were to get out of the play-in tournament and make it into the playoffs. So I got Washington in the Eastern Conference, and I got Golden State if the Lakers get out of the play-in tournament. If they don't, then the Lakers would, if they stayed in the play-in tournament.
So as per usual, Kyle and I typically have the same thought process going into a lot of these predictions and analysis. Obviously, if the Los Angeles Lakers, being the defending champs that they are, Anthony Davis maintains the level of play that he has over the last couple of days, and LeBron James comes back and just plays average LeBron James. He doesn't have to score 25, 28 and have like 8 and 8. He can just put up 22, 5 and 5. He just automatically attracts the defense to have to focus in on him. And then AD, you can't double AD if LeBron's on the court, because then LeBron's going to get somebody else involved, or he's going to dominate. So I agree with Kyle. I believe that the Lakers do swap with Portland right now. And I think that the Lakers end up getting out of the play-in tournament, which would lead them to play the Clippers in a first-round matchup, which Kyle and I were actually talking before. We get the series we were supposed to get last year in the Western Conference Finals. but except it's going to be a first-round matchup, a battle between the LAs. It's going to be a phenomenal series if it were to pan out. And I agree with Kyle completely. If Portland slides down, I know history tends to favor repeating itself sometimes. And in this particular case, the Warriors have pretty much dominated the Blazers over the last 5 years in multiple playoff matchups. Mm-hmm. Granted, Golden State has been loaded with Kevin Durant, with Klay Thompson, with Draymond Green being a lot more offensively competent over the last couple of seasons. The roster's pretty much completely altered other than Steph Curry being the main focal point that's remained the same and Draymond Green. But we all know, like I just said, Draymond has not exactly been offensively gifted as he was a couple of years back. He's more focused on protecting the rim, rebounding, facilitating a little bit more. And lackluster in scoring is an understatement. Draymond he looks completely like incapable of putting the basket in the hole. I mean, he's having a terrible offensive season, in my opinion. He's not shooting the ball well. His field goal percentage isn't the best in the world. But at the same time, I'm sitting here and I'm just looking at the play-in situation. If Golden State were to play Portland with Stephen Curry being, I'll get into him in a second. I think Golden State wins that series, but you have to give credit. Damian Lillard has been playing absolutely phenomenal this season as well. He has cooled off a little bit as of late in terms of him being in the MVP discussion, as we talked about a month ago. But you still have to respect Steph and Dame, like they did in the All-Star game, can pull from anywhere on the court. And I think that would be a phenomenal matchup, a one shot to get in the damn playoffs. I think Dame and Steph going one-on-one back and forth would be an incredible play-in situation. I think it's going to get great ratings. But it's just Wardell has just been godly on another planet. Like, if I had a Curry jersey, I'd probably sleep in it because the way this man playing right now is just he hooping. There's no other word to say it. Between the 9 and the 10 seed, again, if it was to end, it'd be Memphis versus San Antonio. Both of these teams have been very inconsistent. They've both been teetering between the 10 and 8 seeds pretty much all season. Ja Morant is obviously one of the best up-and-coming under 25 stars in this league. We all know he can jump out the gym. We all know that Dylan Brooks, Grayson Allen, Jonas Valanciunas are all great players. But we all know that Greg Popovich and that system over there can dominate anybody if they need to in a half-court set. You know, DeMar DeRozan has been playing very well as of late. DeJounte Murray has been playing very well after he got hurt last year. So, I mean, overall, I think that would be a kind of like a gritty physical defensive match, at least in my opinion. Both teams very similar, but also very different at the same time, if you guys can follow me on that note. But if it did come down to it, I think I could take Golden State over Portland if they slide. And I think I would probably take Memphis over the Spurs just because of their young athleticism. And then I would obviously go Steph Curry over Ja Morant for the 7th seed in the playoffs. And I think that if they were to go up against Phoenix, if Golden State were to clinch that 7th spot after the play-in, I think the Chris Paul matchup versus Stephen Curry will be very, very, very interesting. Obviously, Chris Paul being one of the better defenders in this league at his position. And we all know that Chris Paul and Steph Curry have been going at it well over 5 years. This dates back to Steph making CP3 fall in the regular season with that back-to-back behind the back move under the basket. We all know that, you know, I think Steph or Chris stepped on one of the other's foot and that's why he fell. But nevertheless, you know, the Clippers and the Warriors went at it well before the Warriors started their dynasty run. So there is a little bit of bad blood between Steph and Chris. I think that would be a good series. Overall, the Suns have been playing very, very well. I don't think that Golden State would be able to stop them. I think Steph could maybe carry them to a win or two at most. And that's like Steph popping the fuck off, like 40 to 50 points in both games. Mm-hmm. But, you know, overall, like Kyle said, completely agree. If Golden State or if LA slides up, I take Golden State to come out. If LA falls, does not win, and they stay in the 7th spot, obviously LeBron James and Anthony Davis, but probably the best 1-2 punch in this league. I do think that they come out of the play-in tournament no matter what scenario is in that damn thing or who comes out of that. But yeah, the play-in tournament is going to be exciting on both sides of the league. I mean, I think Adam Silver and the NBA hit it on the head. These are going to be incredible battles, because we both know that the bottom 4 teams in this tournament are very gritty and tough teams. Nobody's really a rollover team here. And I'm excited, man. And don't rule out the Pelicans sitting at the 11th seed here. They're a game and a half back. If San Antonio or Memphis fall for whatever reason, you could see a Zion Williamson and Lonzo Ball matchup in this as well. So Very curious to see how this all pans out. Very excited. And dude, playoff basketball is coming, man. I'm getting itchy, bro. It's gonna be fire.
Exactly. And you have a lot of these teams really making that last second push to try to improve their seeding a little bit. And then with some of those teams that are on the bottom end of the conference trying to get into one of those play-in seeds, this is their week to make it count. And we'll see what happens as far as if there's any shifting that goes in between some of these teams that are going in for the play-in. But it is good that you mentioned New Orleans, because they're only what you said, like game and a half back.
New Orleans is 31-37. San Antonio is 32-35. Officially, as of this chart, they are a game and a half back of the Spurs.
And there's about 4 or 5 games left for the regular season for pretty much all the teams. So look, New Orleans could make a last second push to try to get that 10th spot, and that would ensure them a spot in the play-in tournament. And then once you're in there, you never know what could happen. So it'll be really fun to watch. And I'll tell you what, we definitely look forward to these upcoming playoff matches because they're going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Gonna be wild, man. And you know what else is wild? Wardell, Stephen Curry, the damn second. Okay, I'm gonna put y'all on something real quick, right? Stephen Curry is having such an electrifying year right now, right? This man, Kyle, actually, let me give kudos to Kyle. Kyle, what did you say happened when Steph Curry cut his hair?
So he got a haircut a couple of weeks ago, and I said, if he gets a fade, or once he got the fade, it's over for the league. And he has proceeded to basically put the entire league on site and is just mowing teams down in the process.
In Stephen Curry's last 5 games, 6 games, he's had 49, 34, 37, 41, and 30, and 37. Are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, there is absolutely, positively, there's no level higher than Stephen Curry right now. He's been doing this, like Kyle said, the last 2 weeks. I know that I've been talking about him for the last month or so, but it's really hard not to repeat yourself, because when someone is on a pace like this is history. This is literally one of the craziest runs a player has ever made. And I'm talking about right alongside Kobe Bryant in 2006. We're talking James Harden a few years ago when he went for like 35 a game and he was just like torching the league. I think it was like 20 something games with 30 plus points. And these players are they're doing it at clips that are just unheard of, right? So Steph Curry is averaging 31 points per game, 31.9, literally a fucking ass crack away from 32. He's averaging 48% from the field, 42.9, almost 43% from the three-point line, 5 and 5 in rebounds and assists. And the fucking Warriors are 2 games above 500 with Draymond Green and fucking Andrew Wiggins being their best next players. Excuse me, they lost their number 2 overall pick, James Wiseman, like 6 weeks ago. And this man I can't speak. I'm not a Warriors fan, but the way that this man's playing basketball is just ridiculous. And Kyle and I were talking about it. I truthfully and honestly, wholeheartedly believe that the NBA needs to get rid of this stupid stigma that the MVP has to come from a top 4 seeded player. Because if you are looking at most valuable player on a team, it's Stephen Curry, and it's not even close. All of these other teams have supporting cast members around them. The Nuggets had Jamal Murray prior to injury. They had Michael Porter Jr. They acquired Aaron Gordon. You know what I mean? The Lakers have Anthony Davis. They have Montrezl Harrell. They have LeBron James. They have Kadavius Caldwell-Pope, and the list goes on. You're looking at one player on this whole team that's carried them from like the 11th or 12th seed all the way to the 8th into a play-in. And it's a 1-game winner takes all. I'm putting all my money in my account on Steph Curry because for 1 game, I need you to fucking pop off. He's been doing it all season. Dude, 32 points a game by yourself, no help? I don't want to hear it, bro. I all the respect in the world to Nikola Jokic. He's been a consistent pillar in this league all season, bro. His stats are insane for a 7-footer. He's averaging 26, 10, and 8. Almost 27 11-9, almost, with a steal and a half a game and just under a block a game at fucking 7 foot. And the Nuggets are the 4th seed in the Western Conference. Like I said, great numbers, but he's not doing it at the clip that Steph is. Nobody is, honestly. The closest person is Bradley Beal. And that's because Bradley Beal's got to score because him and Russell are the only 2 players doing anything on that team, realistically. But he has a running mate. He has Russell Westbrook. He has someone to distribute. He has someone to give him the ball or get a rebound and give him the ball. Steph don't got that. Steph's playing with LA Fitness people right now. Are you kidding me right now? Damian Lee, his brother-in-law, playing like shit. Andrew Wiggins, he had maybe a 3 or 4 game stretch where he was averaging like 24 a game. The rest of the season, Kelly Oubre, gaga. Draymond Green, I don't know what the fuck's going on with you. I don't even know who plays the 5 for them. Does it matter? No. He's doing something that hasn't been done since 2006. And I make 2006 a reference point because Kobe Bryant was averaging damn near 36 points per game, but because he wasn't a top-seeded team in the West, Steve Nash won the fucking MVP, averaging 18 and 11. Granted, he had a historic year, 50% from the field, 40% from the three-point line, 90% from the freaking free throw line, which it hasn't really been done very often. The 50, 40, 90 club is a very exclusive club. Dirk Nowitzki's a part of that club, by the way. I get it, but bro, when you're talking value, importance, dominance, these are the players you need to give homage to. These are the people you need to respect and award for just genuinely being the best player in the league right now. Are you kidding me right now? This shouldn't be a debate. This shouldn't be a vote. He's not going to win unanimously, obviously. The one time he did that, I don't even know if it should have been unanimous because there were some other players in the league at the time that were playing very well. But nevertheless, Steph is the first unanimous MVP ever. I think that this man is either right up on Jokic's fucking tail or he's in his ass like, yo, bro, I'm fucking here. And especially if he does hold off and carry them into the Western Conference playoffs and he wins, even if it's just 1 game of the play-in, let alone both. If they make it to the 7th seed, Kyle, he better win MVP. This roster is basura without Stephen Curry on the roster, bro. There's no shot Steph Curry doesn't win MVP, or at least doesn't deserve to win. Yo, Mike Casada, if you're listening, bro, I'm fucking preaching for you, boy. I don't want to hear no slander. And when I fucking get mad, if the fucking Warriors play the Mavs in the playoffs this year or some other shit, I can't talk my shit about him because I've been supporting him all year. I'm just throwing that out there. I had to say that. Sorry, Casada's the big fucking Stephen Curry fan, and he was on my podcast a couple months back, maybe a year ago. But yeah, that's all I got to say. That's my motherfucking rant right here.
So if you take Steph Curry away from Golden State,
number 2 pick in the draft. They're side by side with the Rockets.
How many wins do you think that this team would realistically get without Steph on the team? Because the Rockets don't even have. I don't even think the Rockets have 20 wins on the season.
The Rockets have 16 wins. If Steph Curry's not on this fucking team, and you solely are relying on Andrew Wiggins, which is what they did last year, we're talking maybe 20 wins, maybe 19. They suck. They're just all. When Steph doesn't play, they lose by 50. He didn't play against Toronto, and they lost by 54.
Who did they play against? Wasn't it OKC?
Toronto.
Oh, it's Toronto. And Toronto's been
50-something points, bro.
And Toronto's been mediocre the entire season, too.
Yeah. Granted, Steph Curry mainly gets these points from beyond the arc. I understand that. There are a lot of times where Steph is pulling from everywhere. But if you are watching these games and you see that basically everybody on this team is like incompetent, you gonna shoot 50 fucking threes too, man. He literally is trying to will this team to win. We've seen him animated on the sideline, diving for balls, loose balls, yelling at referees. He's doing it all. He's doing it all alone. I know a lot of people have done this in their careers. LeBron James has done it. Kobe Bryant has done it. Dirk Nowitzki has done it. And a litany of other players in NBA history that have done it alone, that have carried their teams into the postseason. But when you talk about this particular season and the clip that he's doing it, I think that he truthfully and rightfully deserves to win MVP.
I'm just amazed by just the little amount of space that he can create and just knock down shots from 35 to 40 feet like it's a practice session. I've never seen anybody, the only person I can really think of that kind of does it at a similar clip, but not the way that Steph does, is maybe Damian Lillard. But Steph, I honestly thought that Golden State was going to be in real trouble after James Wiseman went out of the lineup with his injury. Because who's going to protect the paint? And we both mentioned that Steph would have to score 35 to 40 points a game consistently to keep Golden State relevant. He's lived up to that and then some. I can't get the stat line out of my head. He dropped 49 points in 29 minutes against OKC. Granted, OKC is not the greatest team in the world. It's still an NBA team, though.
He was getting doubled the majority of that game. And
you score 50 points in
less than a half hour.
In two and a half quarters of playing time. Like, that's silly. Like, the guy was pulling up from 40 and knocking them down. He even got fouled on a 3-point shot with like 30 seconds left. Threw from like 35 feet and splashed it. It was just silly. I could go on and on about this guy, and I could basically just piggyback off of everything that you just said. But this guy needs to be a serious MVP candidate. I'm not talking about like, oh, he's definitely like in the top 5 of the MVP conversation. No, I'm talking like top 2. That's where he needs to be, because I fully agree with what you said. Just because that Golden State isn't a top 4 seed in the Western Conference doesn't mean that Steph Curry should be exempt from the MVP discussion because of that. He is single-handedly taking this team from essentially a trash can from last year because they were just god-awful with nobody on the roster, mainly because everybody was hurt, to where he's going to make this team a playoff team. You take Steph out of the lineup, this is a number 1, number 2 team picking in the draft. That's his impact. It's unbelievable, and I just want to see more from the guy. If this guy can carry these type of performances into the playoffs, where they get out of the play-in tournament and into the playoffs, man, that's going to be fun to watch. I don't think Golden State's going to make it past the first round of the playoffs this year, but Steph Curry is going to make those performances compelling because he's going to keep them in most of the games that they play in.
Last stat fact, because it sits here. It literally eats away at me if I don't say it. Steph Curry is 80 career threes away from Ray Allen's all-time record. He's played 600 less games than Ray Allen. 600. Oh, and Steph missed a lot of time in the beginning of his career with the ankle injuries. And he missed all of last season. I'm just here. You know what I'm saying? I just provide y'all the information, and you do with it with what you please. But I'm gonna throw some more at you, just to give you more, clarity for the campaign. I might start an MVP for Steph Curry chant or like trend on Twitter. He's got 10 40-point games this season. In his career, he has 21 games of 10 plus threes or more. The second place player on that list is Klay Thompson with 5. He's had like 6 of those games this year. I'm just, do with it what you will. I am a mere fan of the sport that is basketball.
So check this out, just to kind of add another stat here. So Steph Curry has the most threes compared to anybody else in the league this year with 324. Buddy Hield of the Sacramento Kings is in second place with 269. So that puts him about 55 behind Steph. Buddy Hield has played 7 more games than Steph has, and Steph hasn't beat by 55 freaking 3-pointers made.
Oh,
I mean, you put Steph Curry, you give Steph Curry 7 more games, Steph would damn near be around 375. just the way that he's been playing this entire season. He would be almost 100 3-point shots made higher than the second place person, which is Buddy Hield, and then Damian Lillard is in third. And he's around 263 pointers made this year. He's had to do it though. It's all on him. And Golden State is basically dependent on one player, and that's Steph. Wherever he goes, they go. It's as simple as that.
It's going to be exciting to watch, but I've done enough Stephen Curry hype in the last 10 minutes. I believe I will drop it and put my energy towards something further that is more meaningful towards me, and that is the New York Yankees. We have turned it around this season as of the last week or so, 2 weeks or so. We had a good series against, I want to say Baltimore was first, or should I say Cleveland, Baltimore. I think I have it here. Actually, I was trying to go off of memory, but the Stephen Curry thing just fucked me up. It was Baltimore, Detroit, Houston, and the Nationals. We won all of those series, thankfully. Or should I say, actually, we split the Baltimore series. We went 2-2. We swept Detroit. We took 2 out of 3 against the Astros, and I believe we took 2 out of 3 against the Nats. All of this pretty much coming on the shoulders of Giancarlo Stanton, who is on a 13-game hitting streak, batting .292 with 9 home runs. He's playing out of this world. He just walked us off the other day. I believe Gleyber Torres walked us off the day before, and so on and so forth. The Yankees are just turning it around right now. After the retirement of Jay Bruce, we've kind of rotated first baseman between Miguel Andujar, DJ LeMahieu, with Mike Ford we called up. I believe Luke Voigt is getting called up from Scranton today at some point. I believe because we just sent Andujar down, and Voigt just hit a fucking moonshot last night in Scranton. So, I mean, I believe he's just coming back to form. I believe we'll get our full lineup right back. Pitching has been great. Corey Kluber's been playing great. Garrett Cole's obviously been doing his thing. Domingo Germán has been playing better. Obviously, our bullpen's been doing its thing for the majority of this season with Michael King, Aroldis Chapman, Justin Wilson, and so on and so forth. The team is just – they look a lot better. We look a lot more poised as of late. We still have some struggling offensive players like Aaron Hicks on the team. Mike Ford, as I had stated. I believe Clinton Frazier is kind of in a little bit of a slump. Gardner hasn't been playing the greatest. But again, overall, the team has just been performing at a much better clip. And we are just, I believe, a couple of games out of first place, if I'm not mistaken.
3.5.
Yeah, we're about 3.5 out of Boston in first. Honestly, you couldn't have paid me enough money to think that Boston would be first, especially the way that Toronto's been playing earlier. And the way that the Rays were kind of clapping us up early on in the season. Ironically enough, we are about to enter a 3 to 4 game series against them in the next couple of days. I believe it is a 3-game series. So, yeah, I'm happy. I am not satisfied because, like I said, we still are struggling in places we shouldn't. But it's better than we were 2-3 weeks ago. Gary Sanchez is still playing like dog water. He did hit a home run maybe about a couple of days ago. Doesn't justify his shit performance, which is why Kyle Hashigoka has taken a little bit more of a starting role as I would have rightfully expected. I believe my case of beer will be nicely added to the fridge, or should I say it'll cancel out my other loss for our bets. And I won't have to get a Gary Sanchez jersey this summertime. So, I mean, Kyle, I know you haven't been able to watch a lot of Yankees baseball, but I know you've been keeping up with at least the statistical portion of it somewhat. What do you think, man? Are we trending in the right direction? Are we going in a place do you think can continue for the success or what?
Yeah, I think you guys are all right now. It's better than what you guys started out with. You guys were freaking like 5-10 the first 15 games of the season. You guys were in last place in the AL East. And granted, the bottom end of the AL East is not that special because Baltimore is not that good of a team. Toronto, they have their moments, but they're just too inconsistent for my taste. Really, I think the top 3 teams in the AL East this year are pretty much right where they are, with the Red Sox being at the top, the Yankees second, and the Rays being third. It's still very early in the season, but the one thing that I do like is that it looks like the bats are finally coming alive. And it's nice because now it takes a little bit of pressure off the pitching staff to be on all of the time. So I would like to see them try to maybe get into the higher single digits when it comes to runs per game, just because I think that this team has the power and decent hitting to really make that a reality, just to kind of take some pressure off that pitching rotation, like I just mentioned. So the one thing that I will kind of pay attention to is, like you mentioned, the rise of Kyle Higashigoka. I probably said his name wrong. I'm sorry if I did, but whatever. It's just, if he can keep playing at the clip that he's been playing at, because he did have a nice little stretch. I want to say this was maybe like a week or two ago. I forget who they were playing. He had a nice 3-game series where I think he hit like 2 home runs in back-to-back games, and was knocking in some nice RBIs with some decent hits. So, yeah. Granted, I'm not as in-depth. I don't have a lot of in-depth knowledge about the Yankees as you do.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the Indians.
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I remember.
Yeah, the Indians.
I remember watching that. But this team is heading in the right direction for sure. They're in a lot better position than they were 2 to 3 weeks ago, where they were really struggling to get the bats going. But they keep this going. I think they have Luke Voigt coming back within probably the next week or two. Just kind of depends on how his rehab starts in Double and Triple A go. But when I look across the landscape of the AL altogether, the Yankees are right there. They're definitely a top 10 team right now. So I don't know if they would be like a top 5 team. I don't know if I would go that far yet.
Not yet.
They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. They've been playing better at home, and they're winning most of these series, whether it's 3 games or 4 games, in the last month or so. So the main thing right now is just to stay consistent. It's going to be a long season, and we're not even a quarter of the way through the season yet. So,
which is beautiful. It really is beautiful. I love baseball season. It's so long.
Yep, it's a slow burn, but the one thing I would like to see them try to get by the end of this month is try to narrow that gap between themselves and the Red Sox. Maybe try to snag that top spot in the AL East. That'd be a pretty solid goal to hit by, I don't know,
June.
Maybe this time, maybe a month from now, maybe early June. But I think they'll be okay. I think they're in a lot better position than they were a month ago. I'll say that for sure.
Oh, 100%. I think that the stadium was electric when Houston came in to the stadium. That was the first time that obviously Houston came to New York after the scandal situation. Obviously last year there were no fans. So this was the first time the fans got to really let them have it. I got to watch a lot of that first game on my phone, and on the TV. I watched about 5 innings of it. I had some errands I had to run afterwards, but yeah, the stadium and the fans let them have it. A lot of signs out there, a lot of shit talking, a lot of heckling out there in the outfield. New York is waking itself up. It's becoming itself again. You know what I'm saying? We've talked about it a multitude of times. When the Knicks do good, New York does good. And now all 3 teams in terms of the respective sports right now, the Knicks and the Nets playing very well, and the Yankees and the Mets both playing very well as of late. New York is on a rise right now in sports, and I could not be happier that the city is doing as good as it is, and again, in relation to sports. And I think that the Yankees are, like I said, trending in the right direction. And as you stated, we have a long way to go. But I couldn't be happier right now. I'm not satisfied, as I stated before, but I'm in a better place than I was a few weeks ago. So I ain't mad at it.
Yeah, because you were pretty hot when they were in last place of the AL East. You were saying, like, I've had enough with this team.
Yeah, it just, when you have players like that literally cost majority of certain franchises' entire payroll between 2 players, you really sit there and you're like, bro, what the fuck are you doing? Our most expensive player on the payroll, and Giancarlo Stanton, is finally playing up to par. And knock on wood, he's playing healthy, so that's relatively huge. And like I said, 9 home runs, batting .292 in a 13-game hit streak. He's doing really, really, really well. And I'm just hoping he keeps it at that pace, or, somewhat in that ballpark. Gleyber needs to wake up. He had a couple of good hits, a couple of good, decent games the last week or so. He had a walk-off. DJ LeMahieu was getting back to his ways of getting on base and at least, making his presence known, of at least giving us an opportunity to get batters in. We just really need to get Aaron Judge on that consistent basis again. I know he had a couple of home runs this past week as well. and some clutch walks. So I will I'll leave it at that. In terms of baseball, I do know that we have one more topic of baseball to talk about.
Before we transition, I do have to mention something, because the Yankees played the Nationals this past weekend, correct?
Yes.
Now, Max Scherzer had one hell of a performance in that series.
Absolutely.
Now, I've seen some tweets about this topic on whether or not that the Yankees should try to trade for Max Scherzer. I don't know how realistic a goal that is, or the idea of that becoming a reality is, but is that something that you would entertain to kind of bolster the starting roster?
So right off rip, I'm going to say absolutely not, because first and foremost, a player of Max Scherzer's caliber is too expensive at the Yankees' radar right now. He's going to cost a multitude of farm system players. The Nationals aren't exactly in the best predicament in terms of staff. They don't really have the best team right now. So they're going to want some ready to play now players. I know they'd probably be interested in maybe Gleyber Torres. I don't know, maybe Clint Frazier out there in left field. Maybe a Luke Voigt, maybe some bullpen relief pitchers, maybe even a starting pitcher. And right now we don't have a lot of starting pitchers to go around. So, I mean, they're definitely not going to give up their ace, arguably their best player, for cheap. So, I mean, not to mention you have to realize that Max Scherzer comes with a massive contract hit. So the Yankees will have to pay out of their ass and probably have some arbitration issues at the end of the year, because they're going to have to reconcile all of that payroll. And would I like it in a perfect world? Absolutely. The 1-2 punch of Garrett Cole and Max Scherzer would be, I got goosebumps thinking about it. It'd be nice. But the limbs we would have to give up to attain that talent would, I think, be a little bit too much right now. I think that we have a very well put together team in certain spots, and to give up some focal points for one piece, I don't think would work very well. I don't think the ends would justify the means, in other words.
I understand. I saw some reports floating around on Twitter the other day, and before we started the episode, I was interested in the possibility of that maybe being explored at some point in the season, but I just wanted to get your take on it, just to kind of see where you stand on it.
Yeah. Cashman has been very passive lately in free agency and the trade deadline, aside from the signing of Garrett Cole 2 years ago. And I don't really see him going out there and throwing our farm system out the window for a man in his 30s. Granted, he is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and he's a win-now pitcher, and he would immediately put us in contention again for a World Series. But, I mean, I just don't think he's willing to give up key components of this roster, in which I believe he thinks can win a World Series. And I think that cap hit would hurt us pretty bad.
Yeah, that's how I see it. It would be great to add him to the roster, but I think it's just too steep. You're gonna have to give way too much up in the process to get a guy like that. But he had one hell of a performance against you guys, and I did have to kind of mention that, because getting 14 Ks against the Yankees
is really easy because we swing at air. But yes, still a good performance.
Yeah, you could just blame it on Gary Sanchez for that, for making the whole team swing it.
I can blame Gary for a lot of things. I can blame Gary for a lot of things. We're not going to get into that right now. Random facto: Albert Pujols, future Hall of Fame first baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals and the Los Angeles Angels, or the Anaheim Angels, whatever you want to call them, has been released from Anaheim. He is a free agent in this league. I believe that he is 41 years old, based off the conversation that Kyle and I had earlier. I thought he was in his late 30s, man's in his 40s. I believe he has about 5 or 6 home runs this season, batting just under 200, if not right at the 200 mark. I believe he would be a valuable asset to a contending team, like a postseason team, just at the DH spot in the American League. Maybe a pinch hitting role. I don't necessarily know. I know a lot of people are campaigning for him to go back to St. Louis, but without the available position of a designated hitter in the National League, I don't know if it's in St. Louis's best interest to pick up the remainder of that contract and or sign him for the remainder of the year, because he's not really going to get a lot of playing time. So I think his best suit to A, compete for a championship, or B, to continue playing would be on an American League team, because of his ability to just have to hit the baseball which is all the designated hitter position is. Albert Pujols being one of the greatest hitters in the modern baseball era, one of the most powerful hitters in our generation, as well as in baseball history, hitting over 600 home runs in his career. Definitely one of the icon pillars in the Hispanic community as well, coming from Dominican Republic, somebody that I've always admired growing up, being of a Hispanic descent, somebody that just played the game the right way and, always played it with a smile on his face, 2-time World Series champion. I really do hope that he gets signed for the remainder of the year, just so he can get, kind of ride it out on the sunset on a high note. Like, at least I helped contribute to a team to win. In a perfect world, he would be a Yankee, but I know that that's not exactly possible. We already have Giancarlo Stanton at the DH position, so it would be redundant. I just hope that he does good,
Yeah, and from my end, I just hope that he gets another chance. And if it's not, he's had a phenomenal career. I mean, when you look at his stats, granted, I have some of them pulled up, and these are not up to date. These are just through May 4th, so it's a week. So got a problem with that? Whatever. So his career batting average is 298. He has over 3,000 hits with 3,253 hits. He has 667 home runs, and he has 2,100 plus RBIs. Now, I think one of the things that we always kind of remember about Albert Pujols was that he was a great power hitter, especially when he was in his prime playing with the St. Louis Cardinals. But he never sacrificed that just for hitting home runs. Like, he never sacrificed his batting just to hit home runs. When you got almost a 300 career batting average, that shows me consistency and the ability to really place the ball in some nice spots rather than just hitting freaking 350, 400 foot plus bombs every game or every other game.
In which he relatively did often, but
but the fact that he was able to do that and still be a great, just contact hitter, that's a big thing. And hopefully I want to see Albert Pujols contribute in some sort of way on a contending team, whether it's in the National League or the American League. I don't really care which league it is at this point. Just hope he gets another crack at a World Series this year. If he does, and he ends up winning it, it would be his third title. It'd be his first one in 10 years. He got his second one with the Cardinals in, I believe, 2011. So if he goes out on a high note, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, big time. First ballot Hall of Famer, no question about it. Not even a debate.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No doubt. But with that said, we'll transition into our last sport of the day, which will be mostly comprised of football. So we'll talk a little bit about DK Metcalf and his Olympic trial run this past weekend. So DK Metcalf was going up against some of the best sprinters that the USA has to offer. And in one of the trials, all pro, well, actually, I don't think he's all pro, but he will be at some point. He will be at some point. Yeah. DK Metcalf, receiver of the Seattle Seahawks, was going up against some possible Olympic runners. And granted, he finished 9th in the trials, but he ran a 10.36 in his 100-meter dash time and only finished about 0.2 of a second behind the first place runner. Now, Kev, granted, DK Metcalf is a phenomenal receiver, a phenomenal football player. And I don't really necessarily consider him a quote-unquote sprinter or a track star in any sense of the word. But I have to get your take on what you thought that this 100-meter performance was like, going up against some of the best sprinters that the USA has to offer.
I mean, I say this jokingly, of course, but I say this respectfully at the same time. He had to have been made in a lab at some point in history and in the universe, because there's no way someone that height, at that body mass, that fast can be as athletic as this man. We're talking 6'3", 6'4", 230, 240, running a 4.3, 4.4 40 time in the NFL. and he's literally sitting here saying, yeah, I'm pretty fast on the field. Like why the fuck not?
Mm-hmm.
I think this just shows the dual threat of what DK can bring to the table in not only football, but sports as a whole. I mean, there are a lot of two-sport athletes in sports history, but I mean, DK being able to run with some of the fastest fastest people in the world or in the country, nonetheless, it's I don't really have words for it. And in all honesty, like I know we prepped for this particular segment earlier, but like I'm literally sitting here thinking about the proper adjective to describe him. And it's literally like escaping me because it's like it's unfathomable what he can do physically. Like he's literally competing with the fastest people who train for this every day of their lives. People that have put all the time and effort of their young adulthood into possibly becoming an Olympian. And DK Metcalf plays fucking football, and he's literally running side by side with them. You literally said 0.2 of a second. Everybody that follows track, granted, I do not, but everybody knows the actual time between like first and second or first and 10th isn't that much. It's relatively less than a couple of seconds. I don't think people understand how fast you have to be within that time frame. And the fact that DK came in 9th, I don't even know what to say. We all knew the man was fast when he chased down Budda Baker in that Arizona game on a Monday night or Sunday night, whatever game that was. And that's with full pads on. This man just sprinted for the hell of it to say that he did it. And I think that DK Metcalf is one of the most athletic athletes I've ever seen in my life.
Dude, he makes like no sense just from a physique standpoint. Because I remember when I watched him in the NFL Combine a couple years ago when he was coming out of Ole Miss, he looked like a grown adult at like 21 years old. I mean, I have never seen a receiver so built and so like ready to play in the NFL just from a body perspective. Because like he weighed like 235 pounds going into the league. Like he already looked like he had an NFL type body ready to go on day one. Usually it kind of takes a couple years for a lot of these players to kind of develop into an NFL competent body. With him, that was never the case. He was ready to go on day one. And the fact that somebody at his size at 6'4", now he weighs somewhere around 240 pounds, can compete against guys that are training to go to the Olympics, that solely commit that solely commit their time to just being the fastest person they could be in a 100-meter sprint. You got to give a lot of credit to DK for being able to just compete with those guys. And if you actually watch the replay video, at the first 60 meters, he was going toe-to-toe with the guys that ended up winning first, second, and third in the trial run. And the guy that he ended up finishing behind, he only finished 9th by like, 200-300ths of a second. It wasn't that big of a gap. But the fact that he could go toe-to-toe with those guys, and those guys are probably, 20 to 30, if not 40 pounds lighter than him, it's just a testament to DK's overall athletic ability. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think he'll get faster. He's very young still. He's in his early 20s still. You give him a couple of years to maybe find another gear where he can maybe improve his time, maybe like a couple tenths of a second. Who knows if he doesn't try this again in like 3-4 years from now? It wouldn't surprise me.
Imagine if he cuts, because it's the off season right now. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't have to play or report to any camps for at least another month, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say he loses 10 pounds. Just for the sake of it, right? They're professional athletes. They have that capability of diets and shit. They can drop and gain weight whenever they want. And let's say he were to actually practice this for a couple of weeks as well. Put his efforts into track, getting his time, getting his takeoff right, everything. I think DK can easily, if he came in 9th with barely any preparation in full football weight, imagine if you give him a couple of weeks or a month's time to prep. Who's to say he doesn't win? He was that close with no prep. Imagine I think he could legit be an Olympic sprinter if he wanted to be. Tyreek Hill, we already know can. Tyreek Hill's small. He has the physique. He has the breakaway speed.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about a man that's we know he's not, but what looks to be double Tyreek Hill's height. And he's almost as fast. It's ridiculous.
You put DK next to Tyreek. There's like it's almost, I don't want to say it's like a foot difference, but I mean,
it looks like a foot with everything that's between them.
It's Tyreek is not that tall of a guy. He's at
like
least
5'9", 5'10".
Yeah, I think DK's got at least a half foot.
6'7".
No, DK's 6'4". DK's only 6'4".
No, I said 6 or 7 inches.
Oh yeah, that's right. But it's like I said, he could try this again in a couple of years from now, because the Summer Olympics are going to be held again in 2024. And let me look up DK's age real quick, just so that I have it here. Because if I remember correctly, he's not. I think he's only like 20.
He's got to be 23, 24.
Yeah,
he got drafted 3 years ago.
Yeah, he's 23. It's crazy that he's 2 years older than me. It's weird. I have to get used to these players being younger than me.
2 years younger than you?
Yeah, he's younger than me.
But we're old, Kyle. 26, bro. Back then.
Yeah, don't remind me. But the trials are going to be probably up in 2 to 3 years from now. That would put him around 25, 26 years old. Who knows? I'm just putting it out there.
Exactly.
If he wanted to, he could, if he put in a year's work to really try to make a presence in these Olympic trials for the United States, he could make it happen. That's 100% sure.
Hey, man, we've seen plenty of NFL athletes be two-sport freaks. Kyler Murray playing baseball. We got Deion Sanders playing baseball. Bo Jackson playing baseball. The list goes on.
Yep.
To see a track star, an NFL player, I mean, there's not really contact, if any. It's just a matter of keeping your body in tip-top shape to be able to perform at top physical capacity at that level.
Yep.
And like I had stated, you have to lose a few pounds because that holds you back. And you just have to prep and practice and prepare yourself for the trials and tribulations that track brings. Granted, I don't know what any of those are because I never ran track, but I'm just saying I would assume there are some things you need to prepare your body for. A one-time sprint, just racing, it shouldn't be that bad. But when you're training to be sprinting as fast as humanly possible every day, multiple times a day, I would assume there's a lot more things you have to do to prepare your body. So DK could do it. I mean, like I said, he came in 9th, so it's not like he can't do it. And he's in the prime of his life right now. I mean, he's probably a few years out of the full prime of his career, but in terms of youth, who's to say he can't do it? Who's to say he can't be an Olympian? It ain't me.
I was actually right when I called him All-Pro. He is actually an All-Pro. He's not
first All-Pro this year?
He's not first team. He was second team.
Oh, shit.
But he is technically an All-Pro receiver.
That. Oh, shit.
I thought
My bad, DK.
I thought I didn't know that he actually got second team. I totally forgot about that.
I'm like trying to remember his numbers this year, and I'm starting to think. I know he got over 1,000 yards, and I think he got double-digit touchdowns. So it's not really a shock.
Yeah, I mean, he's just electrifying when it comes to the Seahawks, dude. Like
test tube.
Yeah, he had 83 receptions, 1,300 yards receiving, and 10 touchdowns this past season.
Yep. Nope. Test tube. Anyway, on to the next NFL topic, which should round out the episode as a whole. The Indianapolis Colts have signed former All-Pro, or should I say former Pro Bowl left tackle Eric Fisher, formerly from the Kansas City Chiefs. Unfortunately, Eric Fisher did tear his Achilles in the AFC Championship this past season. Herein lies my concern and frustration with the organization that I call my favorite team. Eric Fisher will be on a 1-year, $9.4 million deal to join the Indianapolis Colts this season. Based off of the reports that Kyle and I read, they don't expect him to even be available to come back until October, leaning more towards November at the earliest. We all know that an Achilles injury can take up to a year for a full recovery. And obviously, at any position in football, you are using your feet literally every 5 seconds. And obviously, him being a lineman, he is blocking up to 600 total pounds on his feet every day. So that is quite stressful for me to know that we gave a person coming off of an Achilles rupture or tear $9.4 million. Granted, I know Chris Ballard's not an idiot, and I would assume a lot of that is incentive based and, recovery based. They're not going to give him 9.4 fully guaranteed. The complete details of the contract haven't been revealed, but I am very curious to know what that breakdown is, because if he's not available until, let's say, November, December, at the end of the season, pending if the Indianapolis Colts are postseason bound, he would probably start the last 3 to 4 games of the year to kind of shake that rust off and be the blindside protector to Carson Wentz. I don't know if that's enough time to shake rust off or prepare yourself. And again, this is all pending PT goes well, rehabilitation, the doctors, the team doctors, and all the specialists clear him to go back to full-on activity. I'm just not happy with this signing, because when I saw that we were pulling him in for a visit, my mind goes, when we bring a player in for a visit, when any NFL team brings in a player I always see a visit as a tryout. Mm-hmm. If Eric Fisher isn't fucking physically able to try out or, perform his job duties, why did you bring him in? To talk to him? You can do that over the phone. You literally are going off of last year's film, which granted was great film, but he is now, I believe, in either his late 20s, like right on the cusp of 30, or early 30s, coming off of a fully repaired Achilles injury. I don't know if this was a smart acquisition. I get it. It's for depth. I understand. It's to make sure that Carson does have some form of protection at the most important time of the season, but you're giving the man $9.4 million. I'm not happy about that. If this was a 2-year team option for $9.4 million, I would say that would make more sense, because we don't know what Eric's going to produce if he does play. If he comes in on the last 3 to 4 games and we make a postseason run, hell, if we go to a Super Bowl and he plays great, you give him an extension because you have that team option. If he plays great, he's going to get a fat contract at the end of this season regardless. But I'm just saying, there is still a high percentage chance that there could be a setback. He can re-aggravate it. We're talking about an Achilles tendon, not a sprain, not a fracture, your Achilles. And we all know the caliber of athletes that have ruptured Achilles in all of sports. Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, and a litany of other players in all sports. Mm-hmm. And we all know that is a grueling recovery process. And football is the most physical sport in the world. And for you to tell me you're going to get $9.4 million without even touching the field for us, it leads me to be concerned. Again, granted, Chris Ballard's not an idiot. I trust Chris Ballard completely. He has shown in the last 3 years of being our general manager, he not only knows how to draft, but he knows how to spend the cap, and he knows how to make sure to save money where we need it. In retrospect, I don't know how this helps us save, because we still have to re-sign all-pro guard Quentin Nelson to an extension, as well as Darius Leonard and Braden Smith and some other players. So I'm just kind of looking at Ballard like, we just paid all of our rookies except for, I think we signed every rookie except for maybe 2 or 3. And we have to give those players extensions that rightfully deserve them. So what in the hell are we doing right now, signing a guy that isn't going to touch the field until possibly a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving? This much money.
It's a fair point. But who do the Colts currently have to protect Carson's blind spot?
Our blind side is trash. It's some guy named Davenport and Tunzel, not Laramie Tunzel, some random, I don't even know, man. Some scrubs. Like when people rated or people looked at their, I don't know if it was Pro Football Focus's overall rating or something like that. We all know Pro Football Focus is trash, but like overall at the left tackle position, the players that we signed, I think his name is Devi or whatever. They were at the bottom tier of eligible players on the left tackle position, at the left tackle position. So, I mean, Ballard's sitting here signing dirt lickers for chump change to create depth. And then we go inside a guy with one leg. So it's like, are we trying to build a 3-legged machine, or are we going to start chopping body pieces of the 3 of them to make one cohesive left tackle? Because I really don't know what the hell's going on here.
I mean, he was a rock for Kansas City for basically almost a decade. So granted, I know coming off an Achilles injury is tough. But I will say this, with Eric Fisher, I wouldn't put it past him to recover from this as quickly as he can. Granted, I know this is not the same. I know this person is not the same player as Eric Fisher, but I remember Isaiah Wynn of the New England Patriots. He suffered a torn Achilles coming into his rookie year, and he has been one of the most consistent tackles that New England's had in quite some time. So I think as long as Eric Fisher stays on track with his rehabilitation process, that's probably going to put him somewhere to come back, like you mentioned, probably in the last half of the season, maybe the last quarter of the season. And I will say this, though. He could definitely add a nice veteran leadership presence to the offensive line. Granted, Quentin Nelson is the standout of that offensive line, but having somebody like Fisher there, being able to mentor some of those younger guys, especially those guys that are going to be protecting that left side of the line for Carson for at least the first half of the season, having Fisher there can definitely be a positive impact for those players. And who knows? Could Fisher just be a depth acquisition? That's how I kind of see it. But I think once he gets cleared, he's going to be the starter. He will be the starter at some point this season. And if the Colts end up making the playoffs this year, I think he's going to be a vital piece to how the Colts are going to be able to run the ball and pass. So I think if they definitely get him back in the lineup as soon as possible, granted it's going to be, probably at the earliest November, maybe the latest December. I highly doubt that he's going to miss the entire season. Granted, I know Achilles injuries take a long time to recover from, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't play this season. And it tells me that the reason why Chris Ballard signed him was because he expects Fisher to be ready, at least with some games left in the regular season. That's just how I kind of see it.
I can only hope, like we know that I know that this draft would probably be one of the weirdest draft classes that the Colts have had in the last 3 to 4 years, just because we knew we had some players or some positions to address, and we didn't necessarily address them completely. Mm-hmm. We needed a left tackle. We drafted one tackle. We needed a wide receiver. We drafted one wide receiver. We did address the pass rush situation, which was good with our first 2 picks. We did draft, I believe, another tackle or defensive lineman later in the draft as well. We drafted another quarterback, the guy out of Texas, and we also drafted a tight end out of SMU to kind of do that Jack Doyle. I mean, not Jack Doyle, to replace Trey Burton with the athleticism and his catch radius. I believe his skill set is kind of similar to his, but obviously at a rookie price. Again, it's just a weird draft class. We didn't address everything we needed, but we did address certain things, and we did sign the scrubs at left tackle. So maybe we get lucky and one of them wake up and realize that, we can win a Super Bowl. Please step the fuck up. I have no hopes for them, but the Fisher signing itself, I mean, only time will tell. That's literally all we can do, and hope that his rehab has absolutely bars no setbacks, and that he comes back healthy and strong and ready to protect Carson Wentz. Because if Carson is getting a beating on the left side because of those 2 numbskulls that Ballard signed, I don't know how well we're going to be doing in that point of the season when we get to Eric Fisher coming back. Because if Carson starts running for his life again, or if Carson starts taking a beating like he did in Philly, you might see another relapse of last season. So I can only hope that we find some better protection, or that Eric Fisher comes back 100% healthy before Christmas, or should I say before Thanksgiving.
Fair enough. And before we wrap up this episode, you guys, I do want to take some time to congratulate Russell Westbrook. He has officially passed Oscar Robertson for the all-time NBA triple-double record. He just secured his 182nd career triple-double. Currently, as it stands, he has 23 points, 17 assists, and 10 rebounds. They are playing the Atlanta Hawks right now, but I think the Hawks look like they're about to win this game. So, excuse me.
Really?
Yeah, Atlanta's up by 7 with about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. But still some time left to be played. But
what's Bradley have?
Bradley's not playing this game.
Ah, that's why. Oh, the hamstring. He did get hurt. I forgot.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Our whole prediction might fall apart. We don't know how long Bradley's out. It's his hamstring.
We'll see.
Damn. Sorry, guys. I guess I missed that part. I forgot.
But Russ has 23, 18, and 10. I'm sorry. He did get one more assist. So he's damn near at 20 assists in this game.
History, guys. History.
Yeah, this dude is just unbelievable. I know we talked about him a lot in the podcast, but I just wanted to take some time to address that moment because that's quite a feat. I think the second closest player actively is LeBron James with 99. So basically, Russ has him doubled in that sense.
Yeah, insane. But kudos to him, man. History, it's a record nobody thought would be beaten. And Russell still has at least another 4 or 5 years in this league, whether or not at an averaging triple-double pace, he can still accumulate triple-doubles throughout the entireness of his career. I'd probably say he ends around 250 if I had to make a guess around that area.
Oh, who knows? I mean, depending on how many triple-doubles he gets in the next couple of years. I mean, if he's getting like 30, 40 plus in a season, you could be talking closer to 300. He's still got a long way to go. He's got a long way to go.
Pending injuries and a lot of things.
250 seems like a pretty good mark when it's all said and done.
Reasonable. Exactly. Yeah. Just in case he has a decline or at any point in time he's not getting them as consistent, But
he's still got a lot left in the tank.
Oh, yeah. That man doesn't stop running. He's the walking Energizer Bunny.
Exactly. But with that said, you guys, that'll pretty much wrap it up from here. I want to thank you guys for tuning into the episode. I know we only did one episode last week because I took my vacation, but we will be back with 2 episodes this week, this one being the first one. We'll see what happens when it comes to the topics that we'll discuss. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on everything that's going on across the sports world. But, Kev, before we wrap this up, just did you want to hit on anything?
Just the usual, thank you guys for all the support. Still sitting at a steady 154 subscribers. Shout out to my man Vince. I don't know if I mentioned it last podcast or not. I forgot. Went into his Twitch stream. He kind of gifted us some of his subscribers to come and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So to any of you that are watching, thank you for your subscriptions. We really, really do appreciate all and any support. We may or may not transition into kind of a different off topic. Kyle and I had some ideas and spitballing. I'm not going to ruin it for anybody, but we were thinking about doing something just outside of the sports realm. Something that more along the lines of our personal interests that might, pique the interest of other people to come and watch or come and listen. So stay tuned. Kyle and I are definitely multifaceted, well-rounded enough to come out there and give you guys enough content. We do know that right now it is complete baseball swing. The NBA playoffs are coming up. And, football, we're still a long ways away from any mandatory camps or workouts. So just be prepared for the next couple of episodes to have a lot of NBA content with the play-in tournament coming up within the next week or so, and the NBA playoffs coming up, obviously, within the next 10 or so days, and a lot of baseball content. So just be prepared. And again, we're very thankful for all the support that you guys give us on all platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that stuff. They've been averaging out around 13 to 14 listens per episode, which is a massive increase from the last 2 weeks. We're averaging about 10. So, I mean, to whoever is out there listening and finding us on all those platforms, thank you. We do genuinely appreciate it. And we can't wait to make more, man. The week off was good and bad because I know I was itching. And I know Kyle said beforehand he was itching a little bit too to get this done, and just feels get back in the booth.
I just needed this episode to get back into the groove of things. So now that I feel like I'm pretty much caught up from everything that I missed from the last couple of days when I was in New Mexico, it's gun blazing from here as far as I'm concerned. Ready to go. We're ready to go. So, but with that said, you guys, once again, we'd like to thank you just for supporting the channel or supporting the podcast in any way, shape, or form. And we will see you guys on Friday when we drop our next episode.
Have a good one, guys.
Take it easy, you guys.